Hi, Bubble and Bonnie here for this week's edition of Bubble and Bible Stories. I bet you've noticed we're in the church kitchen today for a new segment called Bible Bites with Bubble and Bonnie. I bet you didn't know there'd be a cooking show for worship today. Our Bible Bites segment is a time when I share a story while trying out poppin' new recipes. The story I'm sharing today comes from the book of Acts. I like to think of the book of Acts as actions the disciples and early believers took right after Jesus was resurrected as a way to follow him and help spread the good news. My first cooking segment isn't going very well. I just noticed my pot is empty and I don't have any food to cook with or even a recipe to follow. That's quite silly, to have a cooking segment with nothing to cook. Oh well, let's get started with our story. Today's story is inspired by Acts chapter 4. The first Christians had started to form church families so that they could worship together. They loved hearing all the stories from the apostles about Jesus' resurrection, and they wanted to learn more and worship together. Their hearts were bursting with love for Jesus and love for one another. But a little boy who had been listening to the stories of Jesus asked, "How can we show love to others?" An apostle said, "Jesus told his followers, and that means us too, that we can show love by giving to people in need." The little boy got kind of worried. What are we supposed to give? Do I have to give away all my toys? No, the apostle reassured him. Jesus taught us to give by sharing everything. But this raised another question. A woman asked, "What could I share if I don't even have much? Sometimes I don't even have enough food to feed my family. Look, my pot is empty." A believer, and that's what the early Christians called themselves, who was nearby heard this, and he ran back home to grab some carrots. When he returned, he handed them to the woman and said, "I have lots of carrots. You can have these." "Thank you so much," she said, and she added them to her pot. Then a young girl brought the woman an onion and said, "I just dug this up this morning. We can share with you." Oh, she really appreciated it and added that to her pot as well. Then a little boy that had been asking those questions before ran home and he grabbed the last bit of rice they had. And he said, "You can have it, even though it's just a little bit." She was so grateful for everything they were doing, and she added it to her pot as well. Others from all around started to bring more and more to add to her pot. Another believer came over and said, "I have these beans all ready to cook. You can have them too." So she added them to her pot. Others were so helpful and shared what they could. She really appreciated all the people and how giving they were. Well, look at that! I guess I did have something to cook for my first segment. This smells so good! And I'm really hungry. But I better finish the rest of my story first. That woman was bursting with joy. She couldn't believe it because everyone shared with her. She was able to make a whole bunch of soup that fed her family, and she could share it with those in need. Every believer was able to find ways to share with people in their church family and others in their community. They gave away all kinds of things. Maybe they had extra money they could give away. Maybe they had land someone else could plant on. Or they had extra clothes or shoes that were too small for them and they could give to someone else. And others gave food too, just like this delicious soup. Many of the people were moved by the needs of others. Their love for Jesus caused everyone's needs to be met. Let's try to follow the example of those believers and find ways to share with others around us. Now I'm off to enjoy my delicious soup. Join me next week for another edition of Bubble and Bonnie.